I'd like to introduce a East Bay native, born in Oakland, second of 10 children, big family. Parents moved here and bought a house in Walnut Grove section, Gaslamp section. Everybody's familiar with that over in Pleasant Valley Hills. They spent a whopping $32,000 to buy that house. It's worth a little bit more than that now, I'm sure. He's 8 brothers and sisters who went to Amateur High. Can't even say it. My 3 boys went there. And he actually had some interesting first jobs. One of his first jobs was actually mopping the floor at Dean Cafe. Which remember that one downtown. And he was the undefeated swim coach of the Pleasanton Valley Club. He received his teaching credentials at St. Mary's College. He had a Master's in Education from San Francisco State and Administrative Services credential from Cal State Hayward. He married his wife Judy in 1977. He has 3 children and 4, or we have 5 now for grandchildren.
Next month we'll have 5.
Next month will be 5, so keep score. He has been principal or vice principal of Dublin High, Valley Continuing Education, and vice principal and principal at Dublin High, principal of Wells Middle School, principal of Harvest Park Middle School, principal of Amateur Valley High School, and like Jeannie Reitzel went into retirement and then called back into service. So it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Jim Hansen. And I understand we have a PowerPoint presentation, but that is not working.
Right here.
Okay, so everybody, hold up a little higher so they can see it. There we go. Everybody can see that, right? Would you have the microphone stand, or would you?
Thank you, Jim.
My pleasure.
Well, we have a PowerPoint presentation, but there was a technical difficulty, so we do have a way to handle this. Dr. Parnell, she's going to be Vanna. No, we do have some flyers out there, but I printed 30. That may not be enough, but we'll walk through it. I feel like a preacher in church and the people in the back pew could move forward if you'd like. Or you can stay where you are and pray. Our report today is about the Pleasanton Unified School District and an update for you, and then we'll save some time for questions. The first thing that we do is we talk about our strategic plan, and basically we're preparing students to make a better world. And one of the things that we work on is all of our students. We care about all students, not just the high-performing students or the low-performing students. We care about all of our students. But before we talk about, get into our talk, I would introduce our folks over here. Dr. Denise, would you introduce yourself? There's a microphone right there.
Ooh, you probably don't want me talking to this. Good morning. Thank you, everyone, for all that you do for our community. I'm Dr. Denise Parnell. I'm new to Pleasanton, and I am in special projects at the district office, but I have been a teacher of all levels, and a vice principal and a principal as well, all the way from elementary to high school. Currently, I am in charge of our LCAP, which is the acronym for Local Control Accountability Plan, and it's the new funding formula for the state of California that Governor Brown put into place. You probably have heard the acronym LCPF, which is the Local Control Funding Formula. I also work in the district for our English Learner Program, and at the secondary level, our ELA and our world languages. So I'm bebopping around everywhere, to be honest. But I'm happy to be here, and I really appreciate all the work that you do, because it's a lot of work, and you really bring a lot to the community for us to be proud of. So thank you.
And Dr. Parnell commutes from Sacramento, so she's looking for a little tiny, little casitas or something. So if you know of a little inexpensive casitas, not in Golden, anything called Golden, no. Next is our parent liaison.
Hi, I'm Kirsten Dwyer. A little background is I am a former elementary school teacher and administrator. I'm currently a parent, one of the 6 parent liaisons in our school district. I work closely with Dr. Parnell, working with our English learners, our socioeconomically disadvantaged students and their families, and I also work closely with our liaison, who is responsible for our foster and kinship students.
And our And our board president, whose birthday is today, Valerie.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Valerie Arkin. I'm a board member with Pleasanton Unified School District, and I'm the current board president. Just a little about me. I've been on the board 7 years now, and I'm a 23-year resident of Pleasanton. And I'm mother of 3 kids, one of who is still in high school, so my youngest. So glad to be here this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie. So, pretend I have the agenda up here. The first thing I'd like to talk to you about is the superintendent search. Then we'll talk a little bit about our CAST scores, and we'll explain what that is. And we'll talk about, as Denise pointed out, the LCPF and the LCAP and our parent liaison program. Just to let you know, I'm the interim superintendent, and my contract is until June. As Jim pointed out, I was in retirement for a couple of years, and I was asked to do the interim, and I'm very, very happy and honored to do that. We've already started the process for finding a search team. The school board, a proposal was released. I think about 8 firms responded to that proposal. And on October 27, the school board will select 3 of those search teams to go forward and be considered, and then they will select one of those teams, and by November 10th, the school board will approve the contract for one of those search teams. And starting on the 12th of November, the search team will start getting input from the community, probably groups like this they want to get input from. They want to know what kind of superintendent you're looking for Pleasanton. And they'll be talking to parents, to students, to teachers, all staff members, and so forth. So the process is such that they will get that input, and then in January or February, they will post the position, and then by April, they will have named a new superintendent who will come on board July 1. So that's a pretty involved process. The reason that the school board sought an interim is that when Parveen Ahmadi, our last superintendent, left, it wasn't the right season to find a superintendent at that point. It was spring, and most of the superintendents had already been named and so forth. So the board wanted to wait and actually do the vetting and the research so they have the superintendent that really fits the needs of the community. So that's the process they're working on now. And so that's, any questions on that? Maybe we can do questions in intermediate. Any questions on that process? Okie dokie. CAF scores, California Assessment of Student Performance and Progress. I think this is an important thing for your group to know about. Pleasanton students did really well compared to the state and the county. And in the handout that I gave you, there's a list of the, I wish I'd made more. I should have called Jim and asked how many were. I only made 30. There's quite a few more folks here. But the way the CASP is done, it's an interesting process. The students in the past, as you probably know if you have children, we had what we call the STAR test. And the STAR test was just a standard bubbling type test where students took a pencil and they, had number 2 pencil, and they bubbled their answers. It got to a point where I think some of Vicky's kids were making designs on the, no, I'm kidding. So that was a process, and to be proficient, you got a 36. 360 points to score above everyone else, you get a 600. So it was one of those standardized tests. The way students are tested now is by computer, where every student is on a computer and they're giving, for example, in ELA, which is English Language Arts, they're given a question. If they get the question right, the computer takes them to a harder question. If they get the question wrong, they go to a less hard question, and so forth. Until at the end of the test, it balances out and the student's true level is determined. And that's how they do the same thing in math. They start out with a same question for everyone, and then depending on how that child goes, the computer decides a more difficult question if they got it right, or a less difficult question if they got it wrong. So it's called, what's that, Denise, what's that kind of testing called?
It's adaptive.
A computer adaptive testing. So our students, compared to the county and the state, did extremely well. And the way we're reporting it out is how students who met let's see, standard met or exceeded. So they combine those scores. So we have standard not met, standard, what's the next one, Denise? Nearly met, standard met, and exceeded standard. So the percentage that we are giving you here in English language art and in math is the combination of the standard met and standard exceeded. So for example, in third grade, our score in Pleasanton is 36%. In the county, it's 45%. So our students did extremely well. Actually, students in this valley did extremely well. And statewide,
You lost me on the number. 36% is a better score than 45%, or how does?
no, 76%. 76. Did I say 36%? This is the first time we've done this talk, and we don't have a PowerPoint, so I'm dancing. 76%. And the county was 45, and the state was 38. So, and that's a combination of the met and exceeded. And that's true in math also. Now, the point that I did want to make too is that we're doing very well, but we have subgroups that aren't doing as well, and that's where we're focusing a lot of our efforts. And that's when we talk about the LCAP, and I'll have Denise talk about this. The LCAP and the CFF is a new funding formula, and it's from the state, and it's focused on our subgroups that are not performing as well as our subgroups that are performing well. For example, our Asian subgroups and our white subgroups perform very well, and our Black, Hispanic, and socioeconomic groups are not performing as well. So we're trying to bring those scores up, and we're focusing and doing a lot of things that help those students. Denise, can you talk a little bit about the LCFF and the LCAP?
Can you hear me? I'll use my PE voice. Yes, the funding formula is, as I shared a little bit earlier,
It was a new funding formula for the state of California, and so we are in the infancy of it. This is only year 3 technically, and we built the accountability plan around the needs of the district. So as you know, the assessments have moved from the STAR, as Jim shared, and we're moving into a new accountability system. So for the 13-14 school year, we didn't even have scores. They didn't release any scores. It was about the technical side of the test, because this test is a computer-based assessment. So we had to make sure that we had bandwidth and all the rooms and computers and for all the students in every school to take this test. In the past, the assessment was a 2-week window that you would have, that every student must be tested. We now have almost a 6-month window because of the logistics of having to get the students through the computer labs and so forth to take the assessment. Once we get those scores back, which we did not receive until this year, this is the first time we received the scores, as Jim was alluding to, we now have what we call a baseline. What's very interesting is Pleasanton did do a very strong job at this assessment. For instance, when New York implemented this the first time, their scores were in the 30 and 40%. So anything in the 70s and 80s is a miracle as far as I'm concerned. So it's wonderful that we have a strong foundation to start with. So the money is based on your performance and your demographics. So we have students that we call unduplicated students, and I'll explain that. That's our English learners, our socioeconomic disadvantaged students, and our foster and kinship students. And the reason why they use the term unduplicated is you can only count one of those categories. So you may be a student that is a foster student who is an English learner and obviously low income, but you can only count in one of those categories. The funding formula gives a base funding for all students, just like the revenue limit used to do. For every student, an X amount for your community is given. Using the example of 6,000, it's different, it depends on your community. In East Bay, you're going to get a little bit more because the cost of living is more. However, for the unduplicated students, they then say, we know it costs more to be able to educate students that do not arrive with the same background of experience. So they want to be able to give you additional funds so that you can provide those extra opportunities for those students to be able to access the exact same information a student that comes in the door with all that background information already. So a good example would be, there was a joke I saw in one of the cartoons that says, here's a line of animals. You have your cheetah, you have your bear, you have a fishbowl, and you say, we want everybody to climb that tree to the top and get there now. Well, the fish is at a disadvantage, not by anything of his own doing, but how are we going to get that fish to the top of that tree? That's our job. And that's why they give us those additional funds so that we can support their needs. We expose them to areas that maybe they've never seen before. When I was a teacher down south, I can remember taking my kids to the beach for the very first time and watching them taste the air and feel the sand. It's a miracle. So being able to provide opportunities for our kids to access the same information that other kids have that opportunity daily to see. So that's why they give additional funds. And it's a formula and it's a percentage. And then what they call that, in case you hear it on the news, is the LCPF supplemental funds. There are school districts that qualify for concentrated funds as well. Pleasanton does not qualify for that. That means you have over 55% of your demographics that hit in that unduplicated category. We don't at this time, so we don't receive those additional funds, but we do get supplemental funds, and I oversee those funds with the help of all of you and our board and all the community members to decide how to spend those funds. And that's the listening campaigns that we'll be starting here soon again to rewrite and update our LCAP. So that's a little bit of a background. It's a lot of information, but I'm happy at any time anyone has questions to contact me, and I'd be happy to share. Sure.
Funny question.
No funny question. All of them are good.
This city has phenomenal parent groups raising money. We've also got PPIE that really...
Absolutely.
Is
Blessed.
the funding formula reduced or adversely affected by the fact that our parents and our community raise money for schools?
That's an excellent question. No, it is not. Every district is looked at by their demographic and their assessment scores. And then the assessment scores is based on their title federal funding. I oversee that as well. So the test scores have nothing to do with the local control funding formula. It has to do with your Title I funding, because the federal government also provides funds for students of poverty. And those funds came in back in 1965, actually. And what those funds support is closing the achievement gap. And that was what Jim spoke of when he spoke of the English learners and some of our ethnicity subgroups not scoring quite as high, which is based on some of the information I just shared with not having the access and the experiences that the other students may have. So no, it does not lower the funding for that. It's based on a formula by demographics and student population. So we have the two funding sources, the state, which is the LCPF, and you'll hear us speak of it within the Local Control Accountability Plan, which is LCAP. So you got two weird acronyms there. And then you'll hear us speak of federal funding, which is our Title I funding, goes directly to some of our schools, and there's some district funds that are used to support schools in like coaching. And then you'll also hear of Title II, which is our professional development funds, and Title III, which is specifically for English learners and immigrant students. And we do have both of those fundings as well. And I oversee all those, but nice question. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Denise. And our parent liaison, I'd like to ask Kirsten, this is one of our programs that we've been implemented in response to the need to raise these other students up. So, Kirsten, oh, you're coming up here. You're up here. I'm your boss. Not for long.
Okay, so I am one of a team of 6 parent liaisons, and we're all district-wide parent liaisons, but we're housed differently. We have Martha Espedo, who is works out of Amador, and she's 0.5 district liaison, and she's 0.5, she works with the counseling department. We have Patty Blair, who is based at Foothill High School and Pleasanton Middle School. Myself and Susanna Lopez-Krulovich, you'll find us in the district office opposite Denise. Rosa Salatore is based out of Valley View, and we just hired, as a result of our local control accountability committee, which is the LCAC, we just hired a Mandarin speaking liaison. So there's currently 6 of us. Our primary role is to empower parents to be involved and actively involved in their children's education, to educate parents. So it's empowerment, engagement, and education. So we're very excited through LCAP. We started as 2 hours a day to 4 hours a day, and we're now basically all full-time apart from Martha. Our jobs are to work with parents. We do a lot of community agency referrals. We really want parents engaged, all parents, and we keep saying this, all means all parents engaged in the schools. We're going to access higher student achievement by having parents engaged. That is a direct correlation, all the research says, to student achievement, and we want to really work on promoting that trust between the parents, guardians, and the educational community. Our 3 major focus areas this year to continue to coordinate our parent guardian education initiatives. We do a lot of nighttime classes, we're involved in weekend classes. Some examples of this is some parent project, which is working with the parents of our most at-risk teenagers, Loving Solutions, which is ways that parents can support their children ages 5 to 10. We do ESL, English as a Second Language classes, School Smarts training for parents, which is the California PTA engagement program, Latino literacy program. We have a mariachi program, which I'm going to touch on later. We also this year, for the first time, are able to work in collaboration with our Asian Indian community. We're offering a Dandiya event, which is, I don't know if you've heard of it, about it, but we're down to under 100 tickets left. It's November 7th at Amador. It is a great opportunity to kind of be part of our wider Pleasanton community, get your Bollywood on. We've got dances, we've got food. It's going to be a great event. I should want some flyers, actually. Technology, one of the things that Denise talked about, we talk about the gap. And as we turn to now, and Jim mentioned, we're testing children on computers. The assumption being that all children have access to a computer at home. This is not the reality. So one of the things that we're involved in is identifying students who do not have access to computers at home. And in the same way that we have a dual textbook system, we have Chromebooks in the classroom, we're lending Chromebooks out to families to have in the home. Some we have just regular Chromebooks, and some we actually have to have the Wi-Fi built in, because there are students in this town who do not have access to Wi-Fi or any computer devices. So we're very involved in that, and I would like to say it's a one-time thing. It is weekly that I'm going to media to collect devices to get into the hands of students. And when I go to deliver them, I deliver them to schools, I deliver them to homes, I deliver them to people in their workplace. And people literally have stepped out of the kitchen line to come and sign for a device. We have a lot of families who are bubble families. They're working, we refer to them sometimes as working poor, who want to be in Pleasanton because this is a great community and they're here for their children to be successful. The other thing we do is we train parents on Q. So I don't know how many of you are parents, but you can go online and you can literally cyber stalk your child's grades. And it's a blessing and a curse because sometimes you don't see it. But some of our underserved families will say, well, my child said that she's straight A's. Well, let me show you how to have a little look at that. So, so we're outing some kids who have been able to get under the radar for quite a while with their parents on that. So a lot of how to email your teacher, how to, just all of those things. So we're trying to close that gap. We're also working hard on, we talk about our students all being college and career ready. Not all students have the same access. We do a lot of work with what we call our first generation students. So their parents don't know how to navigate. My children are technically first generation California students, and it's a lot of work. What we're finding is more and more families are going to outside college counselors. I don't know if you know how that works, but you can hire someone when your child is in 8th grade. If you have $5,000, they will help you navigate that entire process. Not everybody has that. So we're doing a lot of work with getting some people who like to do pro bono to help work with our first generation, a lot of workshops on financial aid, and trying to, again, close the information gap so we can help close the opportunity and equity gap. I'm trying to think, I think I might have lost a page. I want to, so does anyone have any questions about what else it is we do? We work with students, we work with our main role is with families. We're everywhere. So if a school will say, hey, we need this for this family, we do a lot of with the referrals with the outside agency, a lot of access health, a lot of health referrals, housing. We mainly work with ECHO as opposed to realtors, but we have a lot of housing issues and a lot of families who really want to commit to being part of this community and financially challenged by it. So you're an amazing group. We really appreciate it, what you do for our school district. No questions?
A generalized question too, whoever can answer this. And I remember when the economy was having tough times, we did a lot of cuts in terms of increasing class sizes and we eliminated some positions. Can you tell us now that we're past that, if I recall, that's all been restored, how are we doing in crowding the classroom, overcrowding and restoring? I think there were reading specialists that had gone away, things like that. What have we restored and how are we doing in class size?
You can stay up there. Actually, we're doing fine. For example, in the middle school, class size is 27 to 1. I mean, that's how we staff. With preps and everything, that goes to about 32 to 1. In the elementary schools, it's smaller. So for every group of students we get, for that number, we hire a teacher. So in terms of, I mean, there's a lot of folks when, you know, in many towns when they want to build a subdivision and there's folks that don't want it to be built, they'll say it'll overcrowd the schools. The reality is, like I said, when we get 27 kids in the middle school, for example, we hire a teacher. So relative to that, we're not overcrowded. Some of our schools are big. Amador has 2,600 kids. So infrastructure in terms of you know, places outside of the classroom, like our gym at Amador is small relative to the size of the schools. So we can't have an assembly in Amador's gym for the whole student body. So that's an infrastructure that probably we need to work on. But in terms of a teacher for a group of students, we always make sure we do that. I mean, we always do that. In terms of infrastructure, we probably need to do some funding to increase it, to better the infrastructure of a lot of our schools. Hopefully that answers the question. Yes?
My children attend Walnut Grove. We've got 33 children in the 4th grade class. Are we planning on, what are we planning on doing there? And then also too, I just wanted to piggyback on the reading specialists in our elementary schools. Are they, any plan to bring them back?
In terms of the class size, 4th grade you said? 33 is the upper limit. So that's going to stay. I mean, that we're not going to, unless there's some huge funding that comes in that allows us to lower class size. But at the 4th and 5th grade level, 33 is the cap. At the classes below that, the cap is less. As they roll into middle school, for example, you know, class size is pretty much capped at 34. And as you roll into high school, there is no cap on class size, but we are staffing them at the high school at 20. High school is 27 to 1. I misspoke, and middle school is 26 to 1. So the principal receives in spring the staffing allocation and then assigns teachers according to that. And then the other question was reading specialists. We have what we call literacy coaches. So it's a different way to approach the same needs that reading specialists did in the past. And Denise?
Due to our new funding formula, we actually have just interviewed and will be hiring for each of the elementary schools, and it's an EL reading specialist that will be coming in and supporting. So we are in the process of doing some of that. And each year as the LCAP rolls out, we receive more and more of our portion of the LCAP. So eventually, by 2021, we'll have the full funding. We're not fully funded as of yet, so it's a percentage that they increase each year depending on how economy is going, kind of like your life. Depending on how economy is going, we receive a different percentage raise each year. They had projected last year it would be at 12%, and it ended up being closer to a 30%. So the range changes based on economic as well.
So when you say EL, are you saying English as a second language?
Yeah, it's English as a second language, but they help all students. They're not isolated to them. It's any classroom that has English learners, which all of our classrooms do. So it's an extra set of hands that will be in there supporting the staff within the classroom.
Is a new school in any capacity planned as far as the elementary or?
At this point, there are no new schools planned, but if we were to build a school, it would probably be in the north end of Pleasanton. The larger schools that we have, I think, are Fairlands and Donlin. As those populations increase, there may become a need to build in this side of town, as opposed to the south side of town. But there are no plans at this point.
Okay, last question. Getting back to funding, do any of the schools see any of the money from the California lottery?
The lottery brings in, and I don't have the number offhand, it's not a huge number, and that goes into the general fund. So indirectly, the answer to your question is yes, but it goes into the general fund, and we fund each school. I think this year, the amount of money that goes to each school is about $78,000. $78,000. So in terms of discretionary funds. And let's see, I was going to say one more thing. One thing that we are experiencing right now is you might hear about this as time goes on. We placed a number of new positions last year using one-time funds from the state, and we're anticipating that we may not get those one-time funds back. So you'll be hearing a little bit about the process. We're starting the process for possible layoffs because we have to be prepared just in case we don't get that funding. So you might hear a little bit about that. That's kind of a Debbie Downer because it's LCAP funding. We're focusing, on all these great programs. But I want to, we're talking about all the good things that we're doing. I want to also talk about something you may hear about as time goes on. But we haven't really, in fact, we haven't even really released that to the newspapers yet, but that'll probably be soon. So I wanted to let you know that. Thank you for everything.
Thank you so much. The newspaper's here today, so that might be publicized.